Hi Torah sisters, it's Amy Gunther. This video is about another pitfall to avoid, and that is a warning about don't divorce your husband if he doesn't keep Torah. I'm making a series of videos on things to watch out for, especially if you're new to Torah. Some people fall into certain traps, not all people, not most people, some people. And this is a trap that has really dire consequences, obviously. And I want to help you avoid it. It's a really important one. There are people out there, believe it or not, who will tell you that you come to Torah, your husband is not Torah observant, you should divorce him. People say that. And hopefully you're all shocked and none of you have come across this. But it is out there. So I want to have this warning up here on my channel in case you come across it. So here's some things to say about it. This won't be a long video because it's pretty straightforward, but I want to address it because it's really, really important. So yes, there are people out there who will tell you that. You might have them in your fellowship, the people you meet with, in real life, or they might be in a Facebook group or who knows where. They are out there and they're not terrible people. I think they themselves have been taught that by someone else and they are deceived themselves. But it is wrong. You do not have to divorce your husband if he's not Torah observant. The Bible does not say that. In fact, I believe the bigger sin would be on you for breaking that sacred covenant with him. So here's where I think this comes from after watching it for a few years. I'm not sure, but here's my hunch. I've noticed, and I've been through this myself. A lot of you know my story. When I first started keeping Torah, I was married to a Christian man who thought this Torah stuff was nuts. And there were a couple people in a Facebook group who, were telling me I should divorce him. And it was awful. That was like the last thing I wanted. But and I've had other people tell me that they've had similar experiences, and I've heard of it happening. And here's one of the factors. I've noticed the same people who are telling ladies this are also the same people who are very adamant and vocal about this idea that the only people who are saved or in covenant are people who keep Torah, do the Sabbath, the feast, and eat clean. And so they think then that if your spouse is not keeping Torah, that they're like unsaved or going to hell or out of covenant, whatever word you want to describe it. They think that because they're, totally lost, that you're unequally yoked and you should divorce them. There's a lot of problems with this. So first of all, I do have a problem with that idea that you have to do these outward things, eat clean, Sabbath, feast, in order to be saved, or whatever word you want to use. That is false. That is a false teaching, and I can defend it, and I will make another video about falling into that trap of self-righteousness. Although you can read all about it in the Bible. You don't need me to tell you. It's all over. So what they're doing is they're verse plucking, right? They're verse plucking. They're taking things out of context. And then they're just telling you to destroy your marriage because they are misunderstanding what salvation is. Now, what I want you to read, the whole Word of God, but you can spend some special focus on 1 Corinthians chapter 7, where Paul is saying you can stay with your spouse even if he's an unbeliever. And I believe that's even talking about not believing in Yeshua as Messiah, not even just being Torah keeping. So if he's telling men and women to stay with their spouse, even if they're not a believer in Yeshua, then certainly you can stay with your spouse if they're not Torah observant. I mean, to me, it's just such a non-issue. But again, there are people telling people this. So read 1 Corinthians 7 over and over. Paul he packs a lot in there. And basically he's saying, if your spouse is willing to live with you in peace, why would you divorce him? You don't have to. In fact, Paul says, and this is hard for me to understand, but he says that when you are a believer, the family is covered under you, which is weird because we also see that salvation is an individual thing. So I don't quite understand it, but he says it. And so if you divorce your spouse, what have you done to them? You know, because the Father is also patient and long suffering, and you can't be patient and long suffering and wait. Why do you have to divorce them? You don't. So now I've also, don't sabotage the marriage either at this point. I've seen it happen where, you know, the wife comes to Torah and she just becomes obnoxious about Torah. Don't do that. Walk in meekness and humility. You don't have to, you know, be a Torah terrorist, especially at your husband, especially. Meekness, humility, patience, gentleness with him for years, for the rest of his life. That is your calling. Your calling is not to yell and shove Torah down his throat and tell him that you're saved and he's not. And I mean, I don't think very many women do that, but I've heard of it. And of course, if you act like that to your husband, he's going to just think you're a jerk and he's going to act like a jerk. And then I've heard ladies use this as sort of a, well, in my opinion, they're sabotaging their own marriage. So then they can say, well, Amy, he's not living in peace with me. He hates me. He hates this Torah stuff. And so I guess I have to divorce him because of 1 Corinthians 7. And I'm like, well, you set him up. You set him up to hate you and to hate Torah. So how you act towards your husband greatly, tremendously affects if you're living in peace with him. And it is hard. And I'm going to make another video about how to live with a husband who doesn't keep Torah and to live well and to thrive and to have a great marriage, even though, but so if you're using 1 Corinthians 7 and then you're twisting your actions, I mean, what kind of love is in you if that's how you're doing it? Because ladies, Torah is not just outward stuff. It's a circumcised heart bent towards loving God and loving people. And you can't call yourself, well, I have to be careful because I don't like to decide who's saved and who's not. But when someone, you know, on the outside keeps the Sabbath and the feast and they eat clean, but they're a jerk, what kind of fruit is that? So if you really are Torah observant and your heart has been changed from the inside out, you're going to be a nice person. And if you're already in that sacred marriage covenant, don't sabotage it. Be patient. God, the Father, set this up for a reason. And I know the enemy is there and he's trying to pull your husband away, not just from Torah, but from the Word of God. And I've seen it. I've lived through that. But your job, you can't control him. Your job is to love and respect him and to honor him. And I'll make another video again about how to keep Torah, but your job is not to beat him over the head with it and sabotage your relationship so that you can divorce him. You've committed the greater sin at that point, in my opinion. I'm looking at my notes here to make sure I say what I want. So again, you know, the people, if you are in a circle where there is even one person saying these things to you, I think you should avoid that person because your marriage is sacred. And that person may be wonderful in every other way, but if they are putting lies into your head, telling you to divorce your husband, that is really dangerous. And I think that you should, first of all, tell them. Honesty is really important in these situations. Gentle honesty. You don't have to be a jerk. But you can tell them, I don't believe you're right. You're putting lies into my head. It's confusing and it's hurtful. It will if you're going through this, it is, I've lived through it. Again, it's very hurtful for everyone to keep telling you that your husband's going to hell and that you should divorce them. Well, not everyone, but even one person saying that is beyond hurtful. And why are you putting yourself through that? You don't have to hang out with that person. It is so destructive that it is worth breaking off the relationship, in my opinion. And there's very few things that I say that about, because I really value relationships. So for me to say to cut off our relationship, I must feel very strongly about it. But this is one of those cases. Your marriage is sacred. Don't let anybody come in the middle of that. No matter how wonderful that person is, they don't get to come between you and your husband. Nobody should come between you and your husband. It's not helping anything for them to be speaking those lies to you, or for you to sit around and listen to them discuss it. Maybe they're not, they're being, passive aggressive, saying it around you. Why are you listening to it? Don't be around that. You have control over who you are around, what you listen to. And if you're at fellowship and they start talking about that, just say, oh, I'm going to go check on the kids or whatever. I've done that many, many times. You just politely excuse yourself and you don't listen to that nonsense. You can't necessarily tell them not to talk about it, but you can certainly not sit around and get fed that junk. So live in peace with your husband, walk in humility. I'll make a whole nother video about that. Don't sabotage. And here's something that has happened now and then over the years. I've had ladies email me specific questions about their marriage, and I just feel like they're trying to get permission to divorce their husbands, like from me, which I don't have authority over anybody in any way except my own children. So if you're trying to get permission from me or anyone else on YouTube, that's not the way to go. The only place you would even look for permission is the Word of God. And if you've dug through that and the Bible is not clearly telling you to divorce your husband, don't go chasing after a person to tell you that. Because even if I wrongly told you that, I would be held accountable. You are accountable for that. And it seems so strange to even say this, but I've seen it happen where women are just, I think they're worn out. And I have a lot of compassion for that. Living, some husbands are great about, the wife coming to Torah. Some are not so great. And sometimes the women, it's hard. It's a terribly hard situation. I am not uncompassionate. And I'll talk more about that in the next video. But I think they get worn out. And it's easy then for the flesh to just want to get out of the marriage because you think the grass is greener. First of all, the grass is not always greener. And it's not like there's just tons of Torah men hanging from the trees out there, fish in the sea. They're not out there, ladies. It's just the grass is not greener. You're already in a sacred covenant. Fix it. Do whatever you can to fix it. And don't go emailing YouTube people for permission to do what your flesh is asking you to do. I will not even really give you my opinion, because with this stuff especially, there are always two sides to a story. And I know if someone's telling me a problem, I'm only hearing one side, and that's your side. So it would be, I think, irresponsible of me and not wise to give you advice of what you should do when I'm only, especially with a marriage, when I'm only hearing one side. Our flesh sort of takes over, and it's easy to only present the other person's guilt when you're looking for counseling, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I will not even really give advice. So I don't do that. I don't give counseling advice about marriage to people I don't know. Especially without, I can't do it. Like, it's just impossible. So don't ask me to do it. I can't, I won't. It's not wise. Because if you really have a circumcised heart and you're repentant, you're going to want advice from someone who honestly, truly knows both sides and can help you see your own sin and fix your marriage based on fixing yourself. Because that, you just have to own your own stuff and take that before the Father and then before your husband, and that's all you can control. So, I have a lot more to say about marriage, maybe in another video, but just don't ask me for counseling or for advice. I'm just going to send you Bible verses, but you know them all. And you can go and Google. There's a lot of great teachings out there about that will show you all the Bible verses about marriage. But if your marriage is this bad off, start at the beginning and read the whole book and see what God has to say about owning your own stuff, about walking in meekness, about the weightier matters of the law, the Sabbath, and it's just, that's a whole nother video. But when you think about mercy and justice and loving kindness, those are things that you need to extend to your husband in this time, because you're the one who changed, and you don't just get to go pick a new husband. And it's not necessarily helpful. What's helpful is to walk in meekness and humility, and pray for your husband, and enjoy him, and treasure him, and have fun, and have a great marriage. Even though and it's a big thing. I know it's a big thing, and I know it's hard, walking your faith differently in this regard, but it can be done. And for some reason, the Father called you to do it, because he knows you can. He doesn't ask us to do stuff that's impossible. That's in the Torah. What he asks of us is not too hard. So if he has pulled you into Torah and not your husband yet, you can do it. This is a burden. It's a trial. I get it. But you're not ill-equipped. He will give you the strength. He will give you the perseverance, whatever it is that you need. He will give it to you. And you can do it, ladies. You can do it. And again, you can do it and thrive. It doesn't have to be drudgery. It should not be like that. And your children are watching you. So don't divorce your husband just because he doesn't come to Torah. Don't even entertain it. Stay away from that junk, far away from it. And I will make some more videos to encourage you, because I don't just want to leave you hanging, but that's at least where I wanted to start right now. I hate to see marriages end because of taking verses out of context and things like that. It's not right. And that's not keeping Torah. So I love you, sisters. I'm praying for you, because I know it's hard, but you can do it, and it can still be a great marriage. And just wait, because you do not know what the Father is doing. He is working. And I can't make you promises, because I don't know every situation is so different, but somehow or other he is working. And all he asks of you today is, just like I tell my kids, happy heart obedience. Just happy heart obedience. So you can do it. Bye, sisters.